Hi everyone, and welcome to today's weekly podcast episode on
Saturday Night Psych!
Grace and Sam here reporting live from the studio. Today's topic surrounds one of the most popular phenomenons in today's society. Video games.
We know everybody loves video games, especially those listeners that grew up in the 21st century. Sam, I know my brothers love to play video games. I'm assuming yours do too?
You got that right. There's not a second of one day where my brothers aren't on some sort of device, whether it's the Xbox, Wii, computer, iPhone, iPod, PS4, PlayStation, Nintendo, Switch, and, well, you get the gist.
Anyway, back to the matter at hand. I know when I was younger, my parents tried to minimize my screen time so my brain didn't get fried. But to what extent do video games affect how our brains function and think? And can violent video games truly raise aggression in players?
And that is what we will be exploring today, my friends. So Grace, as usual, tell us a little bit about your study and what you found out regarding video games as related to aggression.
Many people have previously looked into the effects of violent video games, but not the effects of online violent video games. Previous research has proven that violent video games increase aggression, but there have been little studies that show the effect of online violent video games. This is shown to have the player experience a more heightened sense of the action rather than if they were playing by themselves. The study I found was done in order to find out if online violent video games causes more aggression in today's society. Violent video games have been among one of the most popular types of video games to buy in today's society, yet many do not know the long-lasting effects that it is leaving in our brains. Researchers have reason to believe that these games pose a public health risk, as well as increasing many players' aggression level. The participants were randomly assigned to one of four groups. 26 people were in the neutral video game while offline group, 23 people were in the violent video game while offline group, 26 people were in the neutral video game while online group, and 26 people were in the violent video while online group. This was a blind experiment, so many participants did not know what they were doing or why they were doing it. They were simply told that they were taking a survey for video games. The participants' first task consisted of playing for 30 minutes. If the subject was a part of the offline group, they were allowed to play against computer characters, subject to the video game's narrative. If the subject was a part of the online group, they played against human opponents via the internet, utilizing randomly computer-selected pre-existing levels. The audio was turned off in all conditions to prevent participants from being exposed to other players' attitudes or opinions in the online condition. Participants in the neutral video game played Little Big Planet 2, which involves creating and solving puzzles. Participants in the violent video game group played Call of Duty, where they were prompted to use guns and violence in order to kill off their opponents. Their second task was then known as the Hot Chili Survey. After playing their assigned game, the participants were asked to complete a survey involving a new hot chili sauce recipe. The participants were told that they personally did not have to try the hot chili sauce, but they were to choose an amount for a taste tester. The instructions also included the fact that the taste tester hated hot chili but was doing this for the money. The participants were given 3 chili sauces, each with a different hotness, a spoon, and a small cup. The results of this study showed that the violent online participants gave the testers the most grams of hot chili sauce, which was the piece used to measure aggression level. Neutral online participants gave the testers the least amount of hot chili sauce. This pattern of data suggests that both playing violent video games online and offline, compared to playing neutral video games, increases aggression. Although this study identified as increases in aggression are not more pronounced while playing a violent video game in comparison to playing a neutral video game online, it was an important finding in relation to the effects of aggression as related to online games.
Well, we all knew Call of Duty was never just fun and games, so despite the fact that the participants knew the taste tester hated the chili sauce, they decided to still give them the most possible?
You got that right. Actually, chili sauce had been used as an aggression level measurer before and has proven to shed truth on aggressiveness.
So video games really do affect how many people think and act?
Totally. This hasn't been the first time that video games alongside aggressiveness has been looked into before. In fact, there have been numerous studies on these topics in previous years.
Wait, but there has to be some limitations to the study, right?
As always, there was the competitive component. There was no control for this aspect, which could have swayed participants one way or another. Violent video games' increased aggression can be in part accounted for by differences in how competitive the game is perceived to be.
Agreed. I feel like competition has to have something to do with how aggressive people get during video games.
Definitely. So, Sam, I know you did similar research on the same topic, but in a little bit of a different sense. Why don't you tell us about it now?
Well, we all know that video games are a huge influence on a teenager's lives, as most of them grow up immersed in the newest video games. So, when studies get released about the fact that these beloved video games are actually having a negative effect on the brain, people want to know more. They want to know if they're the ones being affected by it, and if the reason they have mild anger issues is actually due to the fact that they have been addicted to playing video games. Participants were asked to what extent they believe that playing violent video games causes aggression. Then, they were given summaries of 2 fake studies about the effects of violent video games. In one study, there was apparently found some support for increased aggression after violent video game play. This was also the positive effects study. And the other study found no significant association with the no effects study. After evaluating both studies, participants were asked to indicate their perceived attitudes change, as well as their belief toward the effect of violent video games on aggression after learning about these 2 studies. It was predicted that those who believed they would evaluate the positive effects study more favorably than the no effects study, whereas the opposite pattern should be observed for those who didn't believe in it. This biased assimilation should lead to differences in reporting attitude change, in that those who believed in it would report to be even more convinced that violent video games do in fact increase aggression, whereas skeptics report to become even less convinced. However, in terms of actual attitude change, no attitude polarization was expected. This study was conducted in order to reveal whether or not video games directly related to aggression. People who believed that playing video games does in fact lead to aggression are disputed by those who argue the opposing way, since video games are played by many ages, predominantly in ages from 2 to 17, where 97% of American teenagers, the lasting effects such as aggression are affecting many. In the past, numerous studies have attempted to uncover the truth as to whether or not playing violent video games will lead to an increase in aggression. Correlation work revealed positive correlations between violent video games and aggression in real-world context. Other investigations have found that habitual violent in video games play predicts aggression in long term. Also, the effects of violent video games on aggression remain significant even after controlling for initial aggressiveness. There are also studies that have failed to find that violent video games cause aggression. So, despite hundreds of studies, there is a continuous scientific debate about the extent to which violent video games cause an increase of aggression.
So you're saying these studies previously given to the participants about aggressive video games are actually able to cause an attitude change, despite the fact that the studies were made up to trick the participants?
Yes, since the participants were hearing made-up studies about the aggression that comes from the video games, this automatically switched the participants' previous thoughts and favored the positive effects study.
How interesting. Both our studies are addressing the current situations with aggression, but they don't address future situations with aggression.
That's true. I wonder if in the future there will be studies addressing the effects violent video games are having later on in people's lives.
I agree. Like, do these video games cause other problems such as anxiety and depression?
I think that violent video games could possibly affect people in other ways, and not just aggressively. Violent video games could possibly even affect your sleep and dreams, in the sense that having your cognition...
Shh, save that for the next podcast.
You're right. Until next time.